Hey, a pleasant good day, everybody. Welcome into the next edition of the JB and Steel Show. This is Sports Fanatic News. Joe Boric, that's SteelFlyers, as we are going to be getting into the NHL's action of the playoffs thus far, into some NBA playoff action, and the early season baseball action as we're only into the second month of the baseball season thus far. But Steel, first and foremost, how are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, my man. I'll tell you what, I am doing amazing. Okay. We're looking at volume number 19. Volume 19. Oh man. Playoff hockey is the best time of the year to be watching hockey. I don't care what anybody says. Right.
At
And
any level, honestly, because I've obviously got to watch a lot of ECHL. The playoffs are great there. A lot of AHL. The Calder Cup playoffs are great. At
okay.
any level, and even overseas when I've watched their playoff games, the
So
playoff games are great in hockey.
like I said, hockey playoff time of the year is the best time of the year going. So like this is Christmas time basically. Second time for Christmas time, because you get Christmas usually in December, and then this is the second go round for Christmas, right? Because now you get all these playoff games now where there's a meaningful hockey game sometimes 2-3 times a night. You know what I mean? And you're getting 3-4 games a night now, and this is what is the best part about it, and it's win or go home. So I'm super excited. I can't wait to get in it. We got a lot of stuff to get into, man. So let's just dive in to volume 19 of the JB and Steel Show.
Yeah, we'll dive right in. Before we do dive into the NHL, I did want to mention, since I like shouting out goaltenders, a couple guys that have really stepped up for their teams as youngsters in the AHL and the Calder Cup playoffs. Arvid Soderblom is a huge reason the Rockford Ice Hogs are moving on as a youngster in the Blackhawks organization. And Devin Cooley, as a youngster who had a shaky regular season at the AHL level, was very good in his 3 games for the Everblades in the ECHL level, has stepped up big time in the first 2 to take the first 2 for the Admirals in that series against the Jets affiliate, Manitoba Moose. So those 2 guys, I think, deserve to be shouted out for how good they've been able to do in the postseason for sure. And also our former goaltender, in the minor league with the Phantoms, won an award this year in the AHL, which is Alex Lyon. So he also had a very good season with the Charlotte Checkers. So there was that. So
cool.
And I'm not surprised by that at all, because he was always very down there. He was always a good third stringer because he would come up and win you a couple games. It's just,
I mean, that's about
he was one of those. He was one of those like adrenaline rush goalies that, like, if you looked at his wins, they were against our rivals. Like all of it, like it was like, well, I think one was against Boston, which is like still technically a rival. Where then another was against Colorado, who isn't a rival, but they're a great team. And that was like in a 72 or something. Like he did have some big wins, and then he came up and did the same for Carolina this year, and won a big game for them, which I think was against St. Louis. So, if I remember correctly, I can't, but he's always been that, and has always been great at the AHL. So it didn't surprise me at all that he was able to capture one of the awards this year with a team that's that great defensively, where it's not like the Phantoms. The Phantoms, he stole some games for them, because they were not always the squeakiest defensive team, where when it came to just like the Hurricanes, usually when it comes to the Checkers, they tend to be one of the more sound defensive teams also at the American League level. So I think all of that put together obviously really helps. And then I
agree.
I'm trying to find. Good. Oh, here it is. The guy that won the American League Hockey goaltender of the year for the most outstanding goaltender, because I wanted to also remember to shout him out, Dustin Wolfe of the Calgary Flames organization with the Stockton Heat. He was also named to the All-Rookie team, and he finished with a 33-9-4 record in his rookie season. And played and was a leader in wins and minutes played and saves and save percentage and goals against average. Jeez. And he did not suffer a regulation loss until January 4th.
Wow.
So
there you go.
yeah, Dustin
Holy
Wolfe,
smokes.
I would say definitely deserved the goaltender of the year. So there's already
Awesome.
some good goaltending up there in Calgary, but you also have a very good one coming up there with the Stockton Heat as well.
For sure. And of course, we also have to say big shout out to the Reading Royals for moving on to the second round. Yeah.
Yeah, beating the Maine Mariners, and then in the first game they were able to take down the Newfoundland Growlers 7-3. In the second game, the Growlers rallied from their solid end to the game, where the Royals did what the Growlers did in the first game, played a terrible first, like 28-30,
Yeah, right.
and then got going. So it's about taking the end game and carrying that into the next game, like the Growlers did in game 2.
Exactly.
And the Royals used their sense of pride and stepping up big time and saying, well, we got our
Exactly.
butts kicked in the beginning. We're going to come out and blow the waters out of them in the beginning of this one, just like they did in our homeborn last game. And the Royals also have played good up in Newfoundland this year. So, like, I'm not as worried as some fans because they have played very good up in Newfoundland. So I feel like we have a pretty good shot, but they do have to take taking the first game would be huge to set the tempo of, like, we mean business if you take that first game of the 3 that are up there in Newfoundland.
I would say, yeah. You know what I mean? For sure, for sure. So big shout out to those guys. What do you say we hop onto the senior circuit there? What do you think?
Yeah. We can also move on to the senior circuit. I will shout out Stefan Nosen won and Poldarowski won 2 of the AHL scoring titles as well. The Chicago Wolves basically stole half of the AHL awards because when it came to, I said the Charlotte Checkers before. I meant to say the Chicago Wolves when it came to Alex Lyon. I don't know why I said the Charlotte Checkers. That was the old old affiliations there. But the Chicago Wolves with a team that Lyon did great with. Nosen and Poldarowski were 2 guys that are good two-way players, but also great offensive guys that helped out in front of him. So the Chicago Wolves, I had old school affiliations in my head there. The Chicago Wolves were the team that Lyon continued to just be merciful for. And, I mean, it's not surprising because the Wolves have continuously with the money. Well, yeah, but the Wolves also are continuously one of the better franchises because they have some of the more bigger ability to spend on the AHL veterans as well. So
yes, they do.
Obviously, they take advantage of that, and it's something that I'm applauding them for. I'm not going to be mad at them for taking advantage of what they can do. But you're definitely seeing them reap the benefits. So yeah, now let's move on to the senior circuit.
Please, shall we? And we've got some very, very important games tonight that are lined up here. Of course, the Rangers and the Penguins. That's going for Game 4 at 7 o'clock. Then you also have the Panthers and the Capitals. That's also kicking off at 7 o'clock. And that's also Game 4. And I got to tell you something. And then the next 2 games are the Colorado Avalanche versus Nashville. That's Game 4. And then Game 4 for Calgary, Dallas at 9:30 as well. So those are the 4 games for tonight. And of all the series, we're going to kind of just touch a little bit on a little bit of everything here, just, hockey playoffs in general, I would say. And so of the first series so far, of all the games so far, almost all the games now are in the 4th game. All the series are now in the 4th game. So has there been any surprises for you? Has there been anything that's been jumping off the page at you, or anything not jumping off the page at you?
Well, yeah, I would say I think Toronto's been a lot more battles, like a lot better in the first, even though they've had some games like Tavares took the onus for having a slow start and all that in the last game that led to their loss. But there's been a lot of blowouts in that series, but they have been also in Toronto's favor, just like the other 2 have been in the Lightning's favor. So I think this series was just like 2 blowouts for each team. It was a weird series, but I do think the Maple Leafs are showing, if they can kind of play a more consolidated game like they did in those 2 wins, then they have a good chance in this first round series. And the Lightning are kind of showing what we talked about, even with Pirlo as well. And you've talked about with John, the tiring potential because of how quick these two Stanley Cups were in condensed months for the Lightning, where that has shown in two of the games, but then in the others, their offense is blown off the water, so you can't really gauge it. So it's a weird thing. So but I would say this series is definitely going to be a lot better than I know E-Money and I had it. And I'm trying to find the sheet that we wrote that down on so I can see what he had. But I know we had the series, I think, I might have said 6 because I thought Toronto was going to be better this year, but I know I definitely had it going to Tampa, where now I do think from how the series has started, the Maple Leafs definitely have a much better chance than I would have first gave them.
So you're saying that one of the surprises for you so far in the playoffs this year has been how good Toronto has played?
In 2 of the games.
2 of the games?
Like I said, that series has been weird as heck. It's been blowouts each way.
Yeah.
And the other one would be Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh then had Casey DeSmith get injured. Louis Domingue came in from eating cuisine and then was able to play really well and do great for them. So I think that's the 2 biggest surprises for me in the postseason thus far. And then the other one, just in a negative, would be how Nashville just couldn't get in Game 2, Connor Ingram, another goal with how good he played in Game 2. So that would be a negative observation. But the other 2 would be, I guess, in
positives, right? Okay. So I would say that the thing that was the thing that's the most glaring for me is maybe not how well Florida is playing. With the last two games against Washington not looking all that great, you know what I mean? Or the first game they lost to Washington, and then they played really well in the second game, and then the third game they played against Washington in Washington didn't look really all that well either. And it's a real shame because they had such a good team, but I kind of feel like that's, unfortunately, the goaltending is letting them down because they're still letting in too many goals, and they're not scoring as many goals because although the whistles not necessarily have gone away, but there's a lot less of them. You know what I mean? And Washington has actually been getting more of the calls, and Florida's been getting called more.
Yeah, I also just think Washington in that, because Game 3, it was like, that's kind of similar to what I was saying about running earlier. They could have had the chance to set the tempo in Washington's home barn. Yeah. But then Washington came out, and after Huberdeau was able to score the first goal, they then just blew the rails off of them and scored the next 4. So
that's what I mean.
Actually, no, the next 5.
5, yeah.
Actually 6, no, because they won 6-1 actually. So like they kept. After that, like Huberdeau scored the first goal, and after that it was curtains for the Panthers. So like that was just a very bad game overall by the Florida Panthers. Like Bob didn't play good, but he also, I wouldn't say played terrible either, because they did the defense was putrid in that game, which is not something you typically say for how the Panthers have played this season.
That's what I'm talking about, especially with Ekblad back in and everything too.
That's also why it's kind of a two-way street. Yes, Bob wasn't at his best, obviously, but also the defense was horrendous in that game. So tonight, that would be my biggest key to that game. You expect the Panthers' offense to bounce back because it's the Panthers and they have all the offensive weapons they have. Their defense, I would expect it on paper to bounce back, but from how bad they looked in Game 1 in Washington, they need to come out strong here in Game 2.
Yeah, you might even see a goaltending change.
They might put Knight in. Right now, the expected lineup I'm looking at has Bob, but that's... I know. Yeah.
I know. So that's the one thing that has surprised me in the negative, is not necessarily how well Washington's playing, because let's face it, they're without Wilson, and he was out after the second game or whatever, and he's probably not looking to come back anytime soon, at least for this series. I don't think. But That's been the surprise negative for me. I was expecting the Nashville situation with Colorado. I agreed with Sutter, and that was going to basically be a waste of 8 days to play against Colorado in the first round.
Yeah, well, it's also the only way Nashville had a chance was if UC Soros was in because he was the Vezina candidate goaltender, where Connor Ingram's is developing into a very good goalie. He was the guy that got the Admirals to the Calder playoffs, being one of the best in the AHL, and is probably getting set up to be the backup for Soros. But he's not fully there yet. But he also could have easily won game 2. They just didn't step up. So I think Nashville, you're just saying they don't have they were able to push the offense enough in the regular season, but here in the postseason, they're not able to, against juggernauts in Colorado, ever get it going.
I also have to agree with you as well. I actually picked Toronto to beat Tampa Bay in 6 or 7 games.
Let me find that thing real quick. I'm going to turn this off for a second so people don't see me finding it. But keep talking.
No, that's okay, because I really thought that Toronto was going to be the better team, and the way they came into the playoffs, the way that Tampa Bay came into the playoffs, didn't feel that it was the best situation going, because Tampa Bay was not winning a lot of games and Toronto was. You know what I mean? And so I really felt that Toronto was going to be, and especially with Austin Matthews, 60 goals. I mean, come on! And when they came out that first game, and I was like, all right, this is going to be it here. And then Tampa Bay just took 2 games away and said, no, I don't think so, guys.
Okay, well, we both had I just found this thing. We both had Tampa in 7, me and E-Money. So we did have this series going.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Game. So it's kind of been a coin flip at that point once you get to 7.
So I picked Toronto.
Okay. And then the one that we picked has no chance of happening now. It seems like no, it can't. It's 2-1, and we're going into game 4. So unless if Washington wins the next 2, which I don't necessarily see happening in this series, I don't think this one will end in 5. But we both picked the Panthers in 5, where that physically can't happen.
I don't think that's going to happen either.
That even can't happen now.
I will say, the other series is that I was a little bit expecting to be more one-sided than what they were is the Calgary-Dallas series.
Yeah, that's been a very defensive series.
But I was expecting Calgary with being the number 2 seed.
And being a very good
team with Johnny and Kachuk and the gang up there in Calgary and their defense and Markstrom and blah, blah, blah. And, man, I'll tell you what, Dallas looked really good the other night. I mean, they just took Calgary to school, and now they're up 2-1 now on the series. Okay, so I was a little bit shocked by that. I'm also a little bit shocked by the Carolina-Boston series, because I really thought that Carolina, especially with Boston missing guys, they missed McAvoy the other night, and and they weren't really sure with how their goaltending was going to go, and how was Swayman going to play, how was Ullman going to play, whatever. And I really thought that Carolina was just a way better team. And I mean, I picked Carolina to beat Boston. I mean, everybody picked Carolina to beat Boston, but I'm just
6 is what I picked them in.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So, but to have Boston hanging in.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily surprised at that, because that's why I picked the Canes in 6, because Boston has all the veterans. The only question I have with Boston was their goaltending, because it's not that they're bad; it's that they don't have any playoff experience.
Right.
So that was more the bigger concern, where they're showing that they can step up enough with the way that the guys are playing around them, especially in game 4. Boston played a great through and through game. Yeah. They were able to capitalize and get that victory, as well as in game 3. That was 2 back-to-back, just great defensive, offensive, all-around goaltending games by Boston in game 3 and 4. After in the first 2,
exactly,
the Carolina Hurricanes at home took advantage of them. So like it was two good first two for the Hurricanes, and then two great bounce back games for the Bruins to even it up. So right now, I would honestly say the series is kind of locked, and then it's whoever takes this game 5 that's really going to have the Andy advantage in this series. Because of how it's been two to really to one side, and then two great games of the other side at their homeborns. So that's kind of how I would have to go with that one. But one I've definitely been surprised because I had the Rangers in 6, and the one game was a 3 OT game that the Rangers could have easily won in the regulation.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next. That was going to be my next series as well too, because I was expecting New York to be playing a little better.
Yeah. Although at the same time, I've read a couple things on that play, and a lot of things have said by the rules that probably should have been a goal because Dumoulin was directed, even though he might have not directly pushed him. If you're directing a player's path,
right,
so they can't avoid your goaltender, that's not on the guy because you're directing his path.
Exactly.
So that's what, at least to me, it looked like on that play. But
I agree with you on that.
Credit to Pittsburgh for having the good setup by Cap, and like they still made a good play in overtime. Well, in the third freaking overtime, to get the win when Kapanen passed it around. Marino, our new scout's son, Marino, head of European scout, one of our heads of European scouting, Sammy, great guy. John Marino, and then shot it, and then Malkin was able to get the deflection goal.
Yeah, right. Okay. But that series there, too, because of the goaltending with Pittsburgh definitely being suspect, and then with Shesterkin being, I mean, he really had a really poor outing in that one game, and that just kind of, I think, set the tone for them, and he needs to be able to come back to that with this game tonight.
Yeah, well, in Game 3, Shesterkin just got destroyed in Game 3, and you can't have that again tonight in Game 4. No. You have to have him come back out and be the.
Yes,
but I do think Louis Domingue's good at the AHL level. At the NHL level, he's just one of those third-string guys that can move the puck and take a little bit of pressure off the defense. Like when you watch him and listen to him on podcasts, he's hilarious. One of those lighting up the room like they were talking about on TNT or TBS. I forget what, because it's been on those two different networks that Turner has, but whatever network that game was on. And they were saying he's kind of one of those guys where he might not be the greatest goaltender, but he just makes the room feel great because he's like, here I come to save the day, guys. So he's one of those guys. So right, I feel like if you're Pittsburgh that has all those veterans, that's a perfect thing because he's also a veteran pro goalie. He's just not necessarily been consistently in the NHL, but he's had a great success at the AHL level. So that mixes in well with Pittsburgh. So I think I'm shocked how he was able to have kind of that battle win in the game, because you would think if there's a game that you had the battles of the offenses and it was a 7-4 game, eventually that would lean towards whoever is in net for New York just because of their advantages there.
Yeah,
but then Domingue in the end was really able to step up in this game and be really sharp in the end. He wasn't sharp the entire game, but in the end, when he needed it most in closeout, he was able to be his sharpest. And also, like Pirlo kind of tweeted, the Rangers, for some reason, they were looking for too much of a perfect shot trying to make their comeback rather than just shooting the door.
Get that greasy, dirty goal or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm with you on that for sure. That's another one of the series, too, that's been kind of out there. I think it was a little bit expected that St. Louis, Minnesota was going to be a knockdown, drag out, and a good series. The game last night was freaking amazing. So enjoying watching these games. And then the LA Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I don't really think anybody thought that the series would be this close. I mean, LA coming in as do you know what I mean, though? You picked the Kings?
Yeah, I picked the Kings in 6 in this series just because I didn't like the Oilers' defense. I don't love the Kings' youngness on their defense because of everybody and their mother getting injured on their defense. But the thing is, Sean Durzi, McClellan's really put a lot of pressure on this kid, and each time he stepped up to the calling card and has just been terrific for the Kings. So I think you got to give credit, and especially last evening when they were able to win 4-0, Durzi was ridiculous in that game at just being able to keep pucks in his own zone, being able to just play a great control the pace game and control the puck and just let guys come to him so he can get the pass up the ice. Like, he plays out there. It doesn't remind you of a guy in his first season. It reminds you of a guy that's a lot more poised than someone in their first season, and they got him from Toronto, the Kings, in a past trade. So that obviously has, I think he was part of the Grundstrom trade too. So that trade has worked out in 2 different ways. if that was the case, if I remember correctly, because both of those players have actually meshed well. Grundstrom is a bottom sixer, and Durzi playing top line minutes as a rookie for the LA Kings. So, I mean, I would say the reasoning I'm not also surprised is they do have a veteran goalie. Yes, it's been 10 years since he's won the Conn Smythe, but Quick is still a veteran goalie that in the brightest lights is not going to fall to the pressure whatsoever. And that is what we've seen. It's just in 2 of the games, the defense in front of him was not there. But in the other 2, the Kings played really sharp in game 1 and in game 4 to tie up the series. So I think it's just the Kings have to play with that more puck hound side that they had in 1 and 4, and Kopitar had that. Kopitar was playing. Dustin Brown in game 4 played like the old school, getting some of those box out plays.
Yeah, he did.
So that was cool to see because he's one of my favorite players that I've got to watch since getting into hockey, since he's grown and now is retiring after this season. So that it's cool to watch those guys step up. That's also why I'm a big guy that believes in some of that locker room jiveness to, like, the other side of the game that you can't explain. When you have one of your all-time greats of your franchise retiring, I think sometimes when you're a Kopitar and you're going to rally the young guys and say, yo, let's pull this together for Dustin and try to go on this huge run this year. And you do see that. So I feel like the Kings have a chance with that. It's not like Quick is a spring chicken anymore, so you don't know how much longer he wants to tend the net in the NHL, and he also obviously has the ability to probably move on and do other things in hockey if he wants to as well. So that there's more guys that have that question there, but you have to give credit where credit's due for their defense of guys stepping up, and also a guy that's been a journeyman in his career for the most part, in terms of not necessarily for being on multiple teams in Troy Stecher, but also for the fact that he just hasn't ever been able to, as an undrafted guy, find a team that he can just find his way. He's only been on 3 teams. It's been Vancouver, Detroit, and then
but still.
But with this game, he came in and he has better skating speed, and so he's not a great defensive defenseman. But in that game, he played one of the better defensive games I saw him play in his entire NHL career. And him and Edler works because Edler's very good in both zones as a great veteran, and then Stretcher's that quicker skater that you can mix in there. So I think that move even made sense by McClellan. So I do like the way that he's able to get the most out of this team and their defense through all the injuries they've had. That's why I actually picked them in 6, just because the Oilers defense with Duncan Keats of the world and those guys leave some defensive zone stuff. And Bouchard I love as a defenseman, but he's still developing his defensive game. His offensive game is elite already. His defensive game is average at best at this point, so he has to build that up, and that's at best. That might be, to some, that's probably being generous. I think it is average, just because you also have to do, like, if you're called upon more to be the jump up on the play defenseman, you're probably then going to just by default, as you see with those guys, make a few more mistakes on the defensive end because you're not going to be able to get back, like you saw with Erik Karlsson during the course of his career. You see with the Dowdies at times during the course of their career, because that's the defenseman they are. So then you have to rely on your forwards to sometimes get back for you. But that's kind of just the way I look at that, because their defense doesn't wow me. And the problem with the Oilers is from their defense sometimes getting out from behind the net, like Pirlo's talked about, and getting out the zone. And against the Kings, who have great defensive pounce players, I don't think that really behooves the Oilers that well. But it has been a great. This has been like another series that's just been a great 2-2. Either the Kings had 2 great games and the Oilers had 2 great games, similar to the Bruins and Hurricane series as well, and the Maple Leafs and the Lightning, where it was just 2 great games for each team. And then in the other games, the other team just didn't really see the light at all.
Right. No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one for sure. I really think that these series are going to be these first set of games, these first series of games have been quite tough to top. Like, that's why I'm so excited about this year's crop of playoffs, because it just seems like every single building is packed. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like there's
for sure,
like more energy. It just seems like it's just more engaged, more, you know what I mean? Like, this just seems like a very special year of playoffs, because look, this year we had more every single team from the East had 100 points.
Yeah.
Right? And how many teams had 50 wins? A whole boatload of them. And how many players had over 30 goals? Over 40.
A lot. And there was a lot of guys over 100 points, a more over 90 points this year. So it was a very good
That's what I mean.
Offensive season.
That's
and
what I mean.
So I think one of the bigger surprises too is, which is why I do think Florida eventually, because I feel like if they can do what you said, the biggest key you said earlier in the podcast is pushing their offense. If they can get that going against the Capitals, their goaltending eventually is probably going to, because Vanacek's looked fine, but their goaltending is not spectacular. So like they'd have 2 guys that are still developing. Where if you're the Panthers, you have a guy that's still
true.
good as a veteran, and you have Knight still developing, but is regarded as one of the best young talents as a goaltender. Where Vanacek and Samsonov was, and now is trying to build that reputation back up after this down season, where I would still label him a good goalie, because I'm not going to knock him all the way down after one bad season, but he's not in the elite Russian goalie category anymore after this season. And then Vanacek has been good too, but I would give the goaltending a little bit still to Florida, where I would still give the offensive nods to how skilled their overall lineup is to Florida as well. It's just it's what Laviolette teams do. They kind of been able to beat down the Panthers a bit, and even without Tom Wilson on the ice, get wins with those dirty but good ways that you can kind of beat the other team out of it, and then knock them out of it, like they were able to do on the power play in Game 3 when Oshie was able to get it, and then after that power play goal, they just kept right on rolling, and then Ovechkin scored another on the power play later. So that's just kind of the way that the Capitals can keep advancing if they play that hard-nosed style. And obviously, Laviolette, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep doing that, because Laviolette's kind of known for continuing to preach that through and through. So,
yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? That's the one thing that, I've been a little bit surprised with how Florida has not played as well as they have, or Washington has played. I don't think it's because Washington's playing a better game. You know what I mean? It's just, I think that Washington's been able to flip that switch and has been able to play the playoff style game. And I don't think Florida's been able to do that yet.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't know that's why I would say they might technically be playing a better game, because for the playoffs, I would say Washington's doing more what they need to do, where Florida hasn't realized fully minus one game in this series what you really need to do to get over the hump in the postseason. And that's what I think they need to realize tonight, that you have to have some of those box guys out, be extra strong on the puck. You can't just be the elite Silky Mitch skill team you in the regular season and score all the time that way, unless if you're Marchment and a couple other guys on the team that do continuously score the dirty but good goals, like the Bennetts as well. You have to get more of that mixed into your lineup, and I think you're going to see that more tonight because in a couple games, like especially the game they won, they had a couple mixed in goals that they were able to not just have the Silky Mitch goals, but they had the rebound goals. Even in the game they lost, they had a couple rebound goals, and not the 6-1 game because they only had the one goal. But like, I think the Panthers in the 4-2 game, they had a couple goals that they were able to get that are not necessarily essentially Panthers goals. So I think if you can play more to just the dirty but good style of the postseason, they can still get it done. But the Panthers have to buy into that, and they don't have guys minus a couple of the guys they acquired, obviously, but their core hasn't necessarily been there, done that all the time against a team that plays like the Capitals because they haven't always been in the postseason. So
exactly,
and they haven't even gone up against a first-round team that has been there, done that, won a cup in recent years, like the Capitals that still is aging but has a core that still that plays and is going to try to bash you because they know they don't have the most overall skill. You win them in the skill department, so they're going to try to beat you in that physicality department left and right to try to throw you off.
Exactly. So look, here we go. Lots of games tonight, lots of games the next couple of days, and we're going to get into some of the other series as they progress. I believe the next time we probably do a show, we should probably be in the second round, I believe, by then.
Yeah, probably. I guess it would depend how certain series goes because Colorado could end theirs tonight. Where if we go to game 7s, some of those are on Saturday and some of those are on Sunday. So
by the time we do the next show, we'll be into the second round.
Yeah, well, we could recap the first round because we wouldn't necessarily like if everything goes to game 7, we'll see what happens. But that's why.
Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah. I'm with you.
But
quick shout out. I have to do this, man. Just a quick shout out because what a pleasant surprise it has been to tune in to the hockey playoff games and hear the best voice calling a game. That's right, folks. Jim Jackson on the call last night with the Blues in the Minnesota game with Jody Shelley as color.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
right.
He does the Blue Jackets, Jody Shelley usually.
Yeah. Because that's who he originally got drafted from or whatever. And then he played for Philadelphia for a couple.
Yeah,
years.
I liked him when he was here.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, and so it was Jim Jackson and Jody Shelley on the call last night for the Minnesota St. Louis game. So, needless to say, that was one of the games that I watched.
Oh yeah, no, those two they already seem to have a cool because obviously Jim knew him from being the announcer of the team when he was here, so they already kind of seem to have some chemistry with each other. Now they're just finding that announcer chemistry, so it already was a cool vibe that they had going.
I agree. I agree.
Gate there, but
yeah.
Tonight, honestly, I hate to say it, but just because they couldn't pull it out, and this will be the last thing we do on hockey, and then we'll move into basketball quickly. They've had, I would say Nashville's probably not going to be able to get one. I thought because of how their defense would be able to, or Ingram or one of their goalies would be able to steal them a game, but they couldn't take advantage of that game that he should have stole them in game 2. So now I think they're kind of unfortunately destined for a sweep. I hope I'm wrong, though, because I would like to see them get that one win in Smashville and then be able to at least not get sweep because, yes, you're not going to win the series then, but at least you're not going to get sweep. And you can go back to Colorado and then they'll finish it in their home stadium and you can have a good win in the series in Nashville. But I just don't foresee it. With the Rangers, it is in Pittsburgh after a great win for Pittsburgh last time in Pittsburgh. So it worries me that they couldn't win an offensive juggernaut game with the Pens, but I do think obviously the overall game and the fact that what the Rangers can do from the back end to the front end in their through and through lineup with Keandre Miller also obviously being very good in the offensive end. You have Adam Fox, who's ridiculous. Schneider's good in both ends as young guys. You don't have as much of the both ends unless if your name's Chris Letang, obviously. On the Penguins, I do think if they can take more advantage from pushing it from the back end into the front end as well to score from their defense to their forward core, because they obviously have guys that can consistently do that. I would say that could be a big key for the Rangers, plus also obviously Igor bouncing back. So I could see them winning this game. I would say I do lean kind of because it's at home for Pittsburgh after they were able to win that juggernaut game 60-40 to Pittsburgh, though.
Okay. All right.
And that's going against my original pick because I had Rangers in 5 in the series, which is not even possible to have happen now because the only team that could 5 is Pittsburgh. So
no, I'm with you on that one for sure. So I'm looking for Florida to do just what they need to do tonight, and that's take care of business. Hopefully finding that right information that they need to find and getting the job done. So I'm looking for Florida to kind of get back on track. I too think that Pittsburgh might be more of the team than what the Rangers were, just because I don't know. And so we'll have to see how that all pans out.
They do have the more experience, obviously, and sometimes experience holds the
which is true, exactly. Even their backup goaltender has. I mean, DeSmith even has playoff experience too from previous year, but.
Well, yeah, he did. Now he's out. The Ming has, I think, pro playoff experience. I don't know. I think he might have seen action in an NHL game or two before this season, but he definitely has pro playoff experience at the AHL level. So,
well, with that, folks, we're going to move on to another playoff round or another set of playoffs that's involving a different set of rules, a different field or court.
Yeah, we're moving to we're moving to the basketball playoffs, which has been interesting thus far because for my Sixers, it's kind of going exactly how fans would hope. Where we were Embiidless in Miami, so as expected, Miami was able to find ways to prevail. And then even though he's not 100%. Since Joel Embiid has come back, they won 99-79. He had a very good game in that game. Yeah. And then the last game, James Harden went back to being the vintage alpha dog James Harden, dropping 31, shooting at a ridiculous clip. And then Embiid was still able to get a double-double as well. And you had other guys continuously mix in there as well. So I think the Sixers are trending in the right direction with Embiid. It's going to be how are they able to do, obviously, back down in Florida against the Miami Heat, and that's going to be a pivotal. But if they're able to steal a game down there in Miami, well, with Joe Embiid, because we didn't even see that yet, well, that's going to be huge, and the Sixers might actually be able to beat this very physical Heat team that I thought we were going to struggle against, but we're not actually struggling against as much because we struggled in the first 2 games, but without a guy that
Embiid wasn't there,
second to the MVP, to Jokic, won it. So
I mean, that's a good reason why reason
why we didn't win the game, and we also don't really have a backup center because Paul Reed isn't a backup center; he's more of a backup power forward. He's 6'9", and then DeAndre Jordan isn't that good anymore. So, we don't necessarily have a straightforward, like you have a guy that can play 5 minutes a night or like something like that, and then you have Reed who plays 10 minutes but is better at the 4 than the 5. So. That's why having Embiid is crucial to the Sixers because they don't even have a prototypical backup center.
I'm with you on that one, man, for sure. They were able to tie up the series. It's now 2-2 apiece, right?
Yep.
The game goes back down to Miami, right?
Yeah.
For the next for Game 5, right, on Tuesday. Okay. And you were expecting this to be a tough. I mean. I can see why this is going to be a tough series. You know what I mean? Especially with the Sixers needing to be able to play at the level they need to play at to go against Miami.
Well, I thought it was going to be tougher because I was surprised how well we did.
Okay.
I knew we were going to do much better with Embiid in, but the fact that the Heat just really didn't have, yes, the one game was pretty close in the end, but Harden, they just didn't have any answer for James Harden all of a sudden when Harden was more of the facilitator in the first three. And then they got killed in game 3. I feel like the way they beat them was more the biggest surprising factor, where it was surprising the Heat didn't expect the Sixers to come back. Well, I guess they expected them, but didn't have an answer for them trying to have Embiid draw players and then let other guys like Danny Green go off in game 3, Tyrese have 21 points as well.
Exactly.
And then in game 4, just let Harden do his thing and take over, and then Embiid got the double-double himself. And then Danny Green continued to play pretty well as well. So
awesome sauce. So now I got a question for you here now, okay? So now with Philadelphia back up to full health now, yeah? I mean, even if Embiid is only at, 90%?
Maybe less than that because he has the thumb plus a face fracture. But, yeah, definitely still playing.
Okay, but, I mean, they get another night tonight, and then they're playing tomorrow.
Yeah, and he's already played great through other things in the past. So, he's shown the ability to play through things, whether it's his back, whether it's that thumb, whether it's now this orbital fracture. So, yeah, I think he has the ability to do that.
Okay.
Another series, I've been happy to see how competitive it was after the Suns took the 2-0 series lead down there in Phoenix, was that Suns and Mavs series. Because that was kind of how we talked about with some of the hockey series, the 2 wins for the home team to start the series, and then the other team answers right back and takes
2 home wins from their place, 2
home runs from there, but exactly, where it was a good first 2, a good close battle in the first game. That wasn't a very defensive game, 121-114. Same with the second game. Not a lot of defense in this series in general, 129-109.
Ooh, that's not a lot of defense.
The Mavs won 103-94 and 111-101. So this series, I was happy how competitive the Mavs were able to make it and come back, and Luka was able to do his thing after kind of seemingly looking frustrated, rightfully so, after the first 2 games in Dallas. He was able to come back and do his thing, as well as Jalen Brunson, the former Nova grad, was able to do his thing with the Mavericks as well. So it's nice to see them be able to bounce back and get that done. And then one of the more nutty series, I think, this far has been the Bucks versus Celtics, that the Bucks lead the series 2-1, because those are 2 very good teams.
Boston swept Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Boston swept Brooklyn, and then you had them destroy them in the second game. In the first game, the Bucks ended up being able to pull away there. And then, of course, this was a great down-to-the-wire game, the last game, that the Bucks were able to win by literally 2 points. And also, you had interesting big-time contributors in this game because Al Horford really stepped up for the Celtics. But Giannis, who's obviously an MVP candidate as well, went ballistic for Milwaukee. And Drew Holiday, the former Sixer, did fantastic. But you didn't have necessarily the big boys like Tatum let Boston down a bit in this game. He wasn't able to get going, where you had Brown and Horford pick up the slack. But this is also one of those games you could look at it if Jason Tatum had anything in the tank in this game, that the Celtics, that this game could have went the other way because of how great Giannis was doing. If their star was able to at least match that a bit, and they didn't just have to rely on Al Horford being a good veteran, but not a guy you expect to step up like that. So it was great for him to do that. And Jaylen Brown, that could have came up big for the Celtics. So I think tonight, they really need Jason Tatum. That would be my key for them. They need Jason Tatum to step up big time in this game, and then they can even up that series.
Oh, that's what I was just going to ask you. So if they have Jason Tatum, can they
playing at an actual Jason Tatum level?
Right. Can they do this against Milwaukee? Or do you think that Milwaukee can still continue to, look, when you go up on a series like this, you have that momentum. Do you know what I mean? And so this game is going to be in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what I'm talking about here. If Milwaukee wins this game, they go up 3-1.
Yeah, and I think Milwaukee has the best chance in the series, but because the Celtics were able to stay competitive in a game that Al Horford, who isn't a guy at this point of his career you expect to step up that much, and Jaylen Brown and other guys that are not their first essential scorers really stepping up, it makes you go, well, if Tatum can really get going and these guys continue to perform well, I don't expect Al Horford to go back-to-back with what he performed there at this point of his career, but if other guys step up as well, I would give them a shot. But I would say, you definitely have to lean Milwaukee because they're the deeper team.
Yeah, they have a better bench.
But I would say I could see this series going at least 6. So if the Celtics are able to balance it out tonight, if not, then this could be a much quicker 5-game series here because the Celtics aren't able to get this game going. But a big series that's been cool to watch because we talked about them being a sleeper West team, not necessarily a sleeper because everyone knows how good they are, but a West team that's not talked about as much as some others because they already were in their greatness period, so people don't want to necessarily always give them the credit as much back again. The Warriors have had 2 very good games. One was an offensive onslaught, 142 points to 112, and then 111
against
to
a very good, balanced Memphis team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then 111 to win by a couple points in that game where Curry stepped up, but Jordan Poole continues to, in that game that they were able to win by 117 to 116, I should say. Jordan Poole, the youngster, continues to step up around the veterans, and in games some of the veterans aren't having their game they would want and desire. He's able to really step up. And then in the second game, the Grizzlies, which was good to see, had a very good bounce back as Ja Morant went ballistic. But that's the other thing. You obviously need guys around Ja Morant to go.
Can't carry it.
To do a little bit more. And that's why in this third game, Memphis was not really able to get anything going because they still had Ja just doing his thing. And then Melton, Jackson, none of the other guys could really get going.
Yeah.
So that's been the big issue. So I would say I have to fully lean Warriors in this one because it was only one game, and that one game Ja Morant went ballistic to win the game. So I would still have to lean Warriors because they're more completed, where Memphis has to rely too much on Ja Morant. And even though he deservingly so won the comeback player of the year, you can't rely on one dude. You need to have things.
Seriously, I mean, they don't call it a team for nothing. Team doesn't revolve around one guy. I mean, it can revolve around one guy, but you have more than one guy on the team. Quick little shout out to Lando Norris from the McLaren racing team for Formula One. Had his helmet painted like a basketball this weekend.
Oh, that's cool for the NBA.
For the Miami Grand Prix. So just wanted to shout that out there. He had his helmet painted like a basketball, and it looked like, like you really wanted to reach out there and just grab a hold of his head and start dribbling it because it looked like a.
Speaking of F1, I actually had a whole conversation with Chris, the Newfoundland Growlers announcer, when I got to the stadium yesterday because he was watching it on his computer. I had a whole conversation with him about Formula One. So,
well, there you go, man. We'll get you schooled. We'll get you up to speed.
But
literally up to speed.
Yeah. Well, it's cool how they do those 4K in the car shots with it, where he also had it. Because obviously they don't have ESPN up there. He had the Formula One TV, so they even have it.
Yeah.
Rather than it on ESPN, where they even have some more zoned in stuff than ESPN would give. But
right. Well, see, if you're outside of the country, if you're outside of the United States, you can get the Sky Sports feed, or you can also, if you want to pay for it, you can get the FIA feed.
Well, he has whatever it's called Formula One TV.
Right. Yeah. That's the subscription that you pay for to get the stream Formula. That's the direct feed from the FIA. The FIA is the governing body that does all of the rules for Formula One, but they also do all of the filming. And they're responsible for all of the track marshals They're responsible for the guy that runs the track, the guy that is the head guy that makes the rules, and I mean. So that's what they do. That's what the FIA is. So, but they have their own. For the longest time, it was like a closed circuit TV type of situation.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, and then they would just sell that feed out. So that's what they did to ESPN the first year, was sell that feed out to them. So that's all. That's all ESPN's doing, is just throwing the feed out there. So, but there you go.
But to wrap up the NBA,
yeah, I was just going to ask you a quick question here on the NBA. The top teams are tied at their series. They've all played 4 games. The other teams haven't played 4 games yet, which that's going to happen tonight. Okay, so do you still think now that we're down to the grade 8?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that we're down to the grade 8, do you still think? You still think Phoenix still has a shot? Do you still think Philly has a shot? Or is it going to be Miami and Phoenix, or what do you think?
Well, I didn't give us the best shot, if I remember correctly.
No, you didn't.
I gave the best.
You did not, but I'm just asking you because now that they've played some games now, you know what I mean, and they've played against Miami and whatever.
Well, the bounce back against Miami gives me a lot of hope, but it's going to be what is this next game 5 in Miami down there with Embiid in, and that's going to be what kind of steers me in whatever direction there.
Well, at least you have some hope.
But when it comes to the West at this point, with how they haven't even had to rely on Steph and Clay all the time, with how the Phoenix battled in their first round and didn't play as good as you would have hoped against the Pelicans without Zion.
Seriously.
It would be, they're struggling a little bit more than I expected. Now, sometimes I am someone that likes to give teams, sometimes showing persevering early can build it for deeper in the postseason. That is another side of it. But they have been battle strong early, that the Warriors have been a little bit smoother, that I would say right now I would have to at least, because the Warriors were able to really just kind of -1 game run through the Denver Nuggets. I would have to say they are at least even with the Suns now, if not more of a favorite for me in the West at this point, just because they played a better all-around in their set of games, where Nuggets are definitely a better team than the Pelicans too, and they stepped up and looked good against them, where Phoenix battled through the Pelicans and now is having to battle through, which Dallas is a much better team than the Pelicans, but they went up 2-0. And then we're not able to steal at least one in Dallas. So now they have to try to win this game 5 to take it back in their home. So that's they kind of screwed themselves there out of their home advantage that they built themselves.
Yeah, a little bit. That's kind of a shame, though. You know what I mean? But okay. Well, there you go, man. That's our hockey and basketball playoffs are clearly in full swing. And there's one little thing here that I want to get into about the Major League Baseball season here real quick. And that is, we are now officially 2 months in.
Yeah, and Chris Woodward did say that the Yankees have a little league ballpark, which he does say that he regrets saying now, but that was a hilarious comment.
Okay.
After that one walk-off home run that Gleyber Torres hit, he basically called it a little league home run, and I was just laughing when I saw that comment, because it's not like, the funny thing is, obviously you should apologize for that, I guess, when you say it as a manager of another team, but he's not the only one that thinks that about certain stadiums like Yankee stadiums, because it is a very small porch, and they definitely designed it for the Bronx Bombers. So
I mean, purposefully built. Hello.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think here? Let's just do top 5 teams. What do you think in the Major League Baseball to round out the show for this week?
Well, I would say 2 of them are in New York. As much as I hate to say it, because I don't like either of the 2 teams.
Right.
But the Mets are arguably the best team to start this season. with how consistent their pitching has looked early. You've had Tyler McGill step up as well, and you've had guys in their lineup obviously be able to be very consistent early, and they're the team running away with the division early. The closest are Miami and Atlanta, 6 games, and then 7 for the Phillies, and then the Nationals are just out of it. So I would say the Mets would probably be, as much as I don't like putting the Mets in first place, I got to give credit where credit's due, and I would say the Mets have to be the first place team when it comes to that, just because of how good they're doing. And then the second's tough, though, because the Dodgers are doing really well.
So the Yankees.
Brewers, who I had as that division pick for that division, they're the winner I picked.
Brewers are doing really well, too, yeah.
They're doing really well and winning how you would expect, using their pitching really effectively and then being able to get enough hitting. So I would say, just because of the completeness of this team when fully healthy, compared to the fact that the Brewers aren't still as stacked as the Bronx Bombers, right, I would go the Yankees second, just because the big thing with the Yankees, like I said, is health. But thus far, they've been in a pretty good spot when it comes to their health. Right. And that's why I would have to give them, for now, that benefit. And they've also been great in their last 10. They're 8-2. They have a couple injuries, like the Zach Brittens of the world, but he's the only big injury they have early. LeCastro's a nice depth piece for them, but he's not a huge injury. So if they can keep
right, but the Yankees are kind of playing, but I'm with you on that, though. But the Yankees are kind of playing some not the best teams right now. You know what I mean? So they should be, They're playing against teams that are not above 500. You know what I mean?
Jays in a series.
Well, the Rangers, the White Sox, the Orioles. You know what I mean? That's the kind of
Guardians, when they beat them, were really good, because the Guardians got off to a strong start and then have kind of teetered off. They beat, and then they split with the Blue Jays earlier in the regular season. And then Boston's not as bad as they've looked. On paper, they have a roster that you still got to pitch through. So I think they've been a pretty good team early. But they haven't played the sharpest tools in the shed, but the way that this team, because the concern for me with the Yankees, that I put them that low in the division because of how good I thought the rest of this division was not their roster. It was the health usually concerns of the roster, and I'm just giving them credit because they've lived up to how successful you would expect them to be without injuries. So that's kind of why I would throw them in there, where I would give the 2 New York teams the nod there. Then I would say, to come back to the National League, I would have to go with, this one's tough. Some of these are just tough because they're close, some of these teams. I would have to go with, just with how good they've been able to pitch this year, hit. Kershaw's having a fantastic season. Gosselin's pitching ridiculous. Gratterall's doing great, who they got in that past trade. Bickford as well. I would have to go Dodgers, because the Dodgers have that great complete team, obviously, where
that's who I have as number 1.
Okay, actually you have as 1. Okay. The Dodgers for me would be 3, and then I would give the 4th place team then to the Milwaukee Brewers, because the Brewers have been great this year, but the Brewers are a team. You got to see how it continues each sample size in this season, as now they've played 29 games. How does the next about 30 go? Because they are a team that's great at pitching, hit second, that is getting enough hitting going early. So that's something that would be my concern going forward. But for them winning that division, it's not a huge concern for me, because the only team you got to worry about is the Cardinals. That's a 2 team race.
Right. Okay. So I have Dodgers 1, Yankees 2, Mets 3, Brewers 4. So our top is a little bit shuffled, but it's all right. Got the same teams in there, just a little bit shuffled.
So you had Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, Brewers 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so we still had, the only team we had in the same spot was the Brewers. And then who did you put 5th?
The Rays.
Tampa. Okay, that makes sense because that goes kind of from the pitching, great on the defensive pitching and perspective, which is why I give a lot of credit to the Brewers.
And they just had a had a pretty good West Coast swing out there with Oakland and Seattle. Okay, they did lose to the Mariners. They did lose to the Mariners, but they still played pretty well there in the last couple of games there out west.
Yeah, they were the team I were between for fifth as well. There was multiple teams. It was them, the Padres, and then if we go to the American League, because there's a lot more teams you can throw into the race there. With how impressive the Twins have been, this is a rotating list, obviously, as the wise Stephen A. Smith always says on ESPN. This list is adjusted because you're going to have a different top.
It's a living, breathing list because
as the season adjusts, because it's a marathon, not
seriously.
a sprint. So I would honestly say, just because they've been great in their last 10 as well, and they have been able to they took down some easy opponents, but also took down teams like the Rays, the Tigers, who are a solid team, the White Sox, who are a very solid team, and played well against the Mariners, who are doing good this year as well, and split with them. I'm going to give the fifth right now. The Rays would probably be my sixth place team, almost even with this team, but just because of how much of a great surprise team they've been early, for how good and how sharp they've been, I'm going to reward the Twins and give them the fifth spot because they've been really impressive early. They've been pitching tremendously. They obviously have very good fielding as well. Okay. I don't know if it'll continuously last through and through, but I want to give them credit early because and then the Rays would probably be right next to them in the sixth spot.
Okay. All right, cool. There you go. Well, there you go, my man. That's it for another great edition of the JB and Steel Show. Volume 19 is now in the books. Joe, tell all the fans where we can reach you, where we can find all your great stuff. And also, don't forget to tell the folks about all the great stuff you're doing with the Reading Royals and all the great information you guys got for all that. So let us know where we can find you and get you, man.
Yeah, you can find me at JJBoric26 on Twitter, Boric6789 on Insta, and then I've been had the privilege to do the color commentating with Eric since Pat's left for the Royals. It's been very fun doing that and covering the team still as well. Man. So that's been very fun. Even in down years, I will say it doesn't matter to me. Covering hockey, even covering the Phantoms was a joy this year. Even in a down season, I just love covering the prospects
for sure.
And stuff
all day long.
And the people that are there, like Chris and everybody, Bob, everybody is cool there, just like they are, and awesome, just like they are with the Royals. And it's a cool vibe in the minor leagues when you cover the games. It's not as much cutthroat as it obviously is when you go up to the big. It's not really cutthroat at all, actually. When you go
but I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean, though.
And then when you go up to the big leagues, it is. So
it's a pecking order,
different adjustment. Yeah. So,
yeah.
It's just a different adjustment, but that's where you can find me at. I really appreciate you guys joining for this. Was installment 19 now?
Yeah, buddy.
So the next one will be 20, our first milestone one, hitting 20 episodes. Yeah, that we'll be doing next week. We got to cover our top 5 baseball teams. We got to cover the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs. Next week, we also touched on some key goaltenders in the Calder playoffs, and maybe next week we'll touch a little bit more on a couple minor league things in like a 10-minute segment instead of just doing a quick,
how they're doing.
Quick 3-minute that we did today. But thank you everybody for joining us for SteelFlyers. I'm Sports Fanatic News. Stay safe out there, everybody, and enjoy the great postseasons, plus the baseball season that is early on in this marathon race.
Yeah, for sure. I'm SteelFlyers. You can find me and all the great folks from the SteelFlyers All Sports Network at www.steelflyers.com. We're talking about Joe Boric from the JB and Steel Show, also Sports Fanatic News, also the great Perlo Wisdom from the great Perlo Wisdom Show. And, of course, John from Off the Ball Hockey, because, man, that guy's just been putting it out there. And the great Peyton on the radio also have been putting it out there as well, too. So thanks to all the great guys. And, of course, the Hockey Writers, Inc. for Lance Green. Thanks to all you guys and all the hard work you do for the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you, the fans, for checking us out and listening to us. Please hit the like and subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at SteelFlyers52. We'll catch y'all on the next edition of the JB and Steel Show. See you later, guys. Enjoy the games.